What's up people, hope you're having an awesome day wherever and whenever you're watching this. I'm your host Eamon Hassan and welcome back to another video here at Most Amazing Top 10. Okay, we clearly have a love-hate relationship with Satan. I mean, do we love him? Do we hate him? Make up your mind, people. But one thing's for sure though, stories about him are clearly all of our guilty pleasures. But before I get into the video guys, just wanted to let you know we're running a contest on our Facebook page. All you have to do is like the page, like and comment on the photo we posted today, and be in the draw to win a cash prize. Cash money people, let's get liking and get them dollar bills. But anyway, moving on, this is the top 10 scary Satan encounters part 3. Starting us off with number 10 is Padre Pio. Saint Pio of Pietrelcina was an Italian saint who had countless violent battles with the devil, many of which left him physically wounded and bleeding. One night in 1906 he had footsteps coming towards his room, so he thought it was one of his friends, so he called out to them but soon realized no sound was coming out of his mouth. No matter what he did, he just couldn't speak. He then saw a huge menacing black hound with smoke coming out of his mouth on a window ledge nearby. The dog then came into his room and said, it is him. Is this a Yoda? Is it a hound? Who knows? And then the dog disappeared. Other encounters involved him being dragged from his bed, being thrown around his room, being spat on. One time he was even left with 3 broken ribs. And Satan would come back to him in different forms, as a black cat, as young provocative girls trying to test his chastity, as his own superiors, or worst of all, in sacred forms. Now what made him such a huge target for Satan was his work as an exorcist. It was said the second possessed people saw him, they would go ballistic, cursing him, doing God knows what, and just before leaving their body, Satan would say, "Father Pio, do not steal the bodies from us and we will not bother you." Another attack in 1964 left him with a critically injured spine and various cuts. Moral of the story, Padre Pio was a badass for surviving all of that. Coming in at number 9 is The Corner. This one's from Amy Strada, who said this happened to her when she was 14 years old. She was in her bed asleep, and mind you, her bedroom is just a simple square and there's a door-sized space between the wall and the foot of her bed. That night she woke up at exactly 2 AM and the only light in the room was coming from her alarm clock. She was just casually looking up the ceiling, but something was looking back at her. It moved to the corner of her room and it had 4 legs that were bent backwards towards the corner of the room, whilst its torso was still facing her. Its legs gripped the ceiling and the 2 walls of the corner, and my mind is breaking even trying to imagine what angle this thing was in. And Amy couldn't see its face, just the shape of its head and its hollow eyes that were just staring at her. She knew she couldn't run because it was clearly blocking the door, so she got under the covers and didn't come out till the morning. I mean, I still use that tactic now when I think someone's in the house, and clearly it worked for her. The first time she mentioned the incident to anybody was 2 years after it happened, and her mum said that her stepdad had seen the exact same figure in his tour of Iraq. He had gone into a forest despite warnings from locals not to. Inside, he had to perform a collective exorcism on his fellow comrade who became possessed. The stepdad believed Satan came out of the soldier and started following him around. So when he came home, it was only about time before his stepdaughter Amy encountered him too. At number 8 we have The Drummer. This one's from Reddit user Smoking Finger Guns, whose grandpa told him the story. Whilst on a road trip with his granddad, he started recalling a story from his youth. His granddad was divorced, but when he was younger he tried to start a band with his brother-in-law Keith. Keith was a great guitarist and the grandpa was a decent bassist. So they bought a small bit of land in rural California that had a house and a barn and turned the barn into a recording studio. They started hanging listings advertising the position of an experienced drummer, and after many trials they settled on a man named Dave. One night they were all drinking and celebrating in the barn. Keith at this point had passed out, jog on Keith, and Dave and the grandpa started talking about weird stuff, mostly occult. Dave's expression then changed drastically and he told the grandpa he was a Satanist and one of really high standing. Did that not come up during the drumming trial with Dave? I feel like that should have come up. But anyway, the grandpa didn't believe Dave and asked him to prove it. Big mistake. But anyway, Dave gets up in all seriousness, holds out his arms and starts chanting in Latin like it's his first language. A few minutes later, Keith, who is passed out, stands fully erect and his eyes are white. No pupil, no iris, just white. Very freaked out, the grandpa instinctively said Jesus Christ, after which point Dave projectile vomits and then dry heaves and then looks at the grandpa with eyes that could kill. He let out a sort of dog growl of some kind and said never speak that name again in my presence, after which both Dave and Keith collapsed. While both were passed out, the grandpa went to the corner of the room just watching them, and he felt a hot sensation on his shoulder like someone or some entity was grabbing him. At that point he really wasn't sure if it was Satan himself or on the opposite side his guardian angel. Filling on number 7 slot is the horseshoe. So this one involves St. Dunstan, who was an English clergyman in the 10th century and who also claimed they had had many encounters with Satan. St. Dunstan was a very respected man. He was pious, he was intelligent, a musician, a skilled metalsmith and an artist too. The whole package pretty much. Whilst living in Glastonbury one day, a man approached him asking him to make a metal chalice for him, and Dunstan agreed and got to work, but as soon as he did, he realized the man or the thing in front of him was shape-shifting before his eyes. He went from a man to a woman and then to a child, and the transformations were so seamless it was incredibly hard to believe. Okay, the man is shape-shifting, they could be the roughest transformations ever and it'd still be hard to believe. But anyway, Dunstan realized very quickly that this was the devil and pretended not to notice the whole shape-shifting thing. When he got the chance, he grabbed a pair of red hot tongs and pierced the man in the nostrils, which caused the man immense pain and cast the devil out. His second encounter happened while he was playing the harp. A smiley vagrant approached him this time, but St. Dunstan somehow knew it was Satan again, and he grabbed him by the leg and tried shoeing him like you shoe a horse. Satan screamed at a pitch so high St. Dunstan thought he was going to pass out, but he persevered. He let Satan go on the condition that he never enter or approach a house that had a horseshoe hanging outside its doorway, and thus the whole legend of horseshoes being lucky was born. Now at number 6 is The Ritual. This one's from Redditor Graveyard Song 11, and when she was around 15 she met her friend's half-brother Luke and they became partners in crime. He was a typical goth, white makeup, red and black eyeshadow, and those two colours were pretty much the only ones he wore in terms of clothes as well. One Friday night they were bored as hell and Luke suggested summoning Satan, because what else are we to do when we're bored? Board games? Screw that! Satan it is. Either way, Luke lived opposite a cemetery, so they stopped at his house for supplies, mainly candles, milk, a bowl, salt and string. They got to the cemetery and found a clearing and gathered some twigs. Luke grabbed a stick and started drawing a weird symbol. She described it as an upside down triangle with a V under it and an X through it. He then made a circle of salt around it and put the candles around it as well. They stood inside the circle and he began talking, starting with "Oh Lucifer." He kept muttering unintelligibly and dropped all of their ingredients into the bowl of milk. He then took her hand and cut it so it would bleed a bit, and then he cut into his own arm even deeper but directed both blood sources into the bowl. He kept chanting, and at this point the user was freaking out, saying, "You know, I believe you, you can summon Satan, just stop now." Luke ignored her and started speaking in a language that wasn't Latin, it was just unrecognizable. He gulped the bowl and then started vomiting violently. He got onto his hands and knees, heaving, and then asked what just happened. She said she thinks they did the ritual wrong, but Luke insisted they didn't. Things got pretty weird after that and they kind of stopped being friends, which I'm really not surprised about. But every time she ran into Luke, he just looked like death, and her own cut wasn't healing at all, and at points it would bleed like it was just freshly done. A month later she ran into him again and he smelled like rotting and alcohol. He apologized for what he had done to her and gave her a necklace for protection. She asked him whether he needed protection too, and he said he had done the ritual too many times that the necklace didn't work for him anymore. Nowadays she stopped wearing the necklace and her scar started bothering her again, and mind you, it's been years. It became tender and red and throbbed like it was freshly inflicted. And on top of that, the necklace encounter was the last time she ever saw Luke. He disappeared off the planet, no Facebook, no Google searches, his own mother didn't even know where he went. Safe to say, Luke's continuous summonings and encounters with Satan didn't leave him in anyone's good books. Coming in at number 5 is the Ball of Fire. So back in 1683 in Poundsgate, England, a strange figure came into the Tavistock Inn and he was dressed in all black and wearing a cloak, but the weird thing was he had cloven hooves instead of feet, which is actually a recurring theme. If you watch part 2, you'll see that in some of those stories as well he appeared with hooves as feet as well. So hooves. Satan. It's a thing. But anyway, he asked the staff for directions to Widecombe in the Moor in Dartmouth. The staff were terrified of this man who wasn't really a man but looked evil as hell, pun intended, and gave him the directions. A few days after this visit, a huge ball of fire smashed into the church of St. Pancras, which was barely a stone's throw away from the inn. It bounced about wildly whilst killing a bunch of people and a dog. Deniers blamed it on an errant ball of lightning, which by the way I don't even think is possible, correct me if I'm wrong, but the innkeepers and those around them vehemently held the belief that it was the power of Satan. At number 4 is Satan's Funhouse. This one's from Reddit user Demonic Wolf, and the story happened to him when he was 15 last June. Since his father was a computer programmer, he became very good at it as well, and hacking into the deep web was quite easy for him. One day he got onto a website called Satan's Funhouse, and like anyone on the deep web, he just assumed it was just some kind of mess up porn, but before he could click off it, he got a message from a chat room he was on in another tab. The person told him to go to the site and that he wouldn't want to miss today's show. He asked the other person what show, and the person replied, also taking his username, which was weird because he had hidden his IP address so the other person shouldn't have been able to see his username, which was demonic. The other person continued saying go to Satan's Funhouse and find out. The boy was scared at this point because the guy knew his name and the fact he was on the Satan Funhouse site. He felt like he was being watched, and I don't blame him. He went into the link but it just said error 404. He went back to the chat saying the link didn't work, but the person told him he was in the right place, don't worry. Suddenly a loud deep raspy voice flooded his headphones and he was directed to another site where he saw a video. He didn't describe the video but said the extent of mutilation he saw wasn't even the main part. He saw things that couldn't even be explained, no lighting trick, no camera trick, nothing. He was certain it was Satan at work himself. He shut the screen, packed his bags and left, but the last thing he saw was a note that showed up on his screen with his address saying you're next. He tried to get his parents to leave with him, but obviously they just didn't believe him. He ran away from home knowing his parents were about to die and hasn't gone back since. Filling our number 3 slot are the calls. This one's from Redditor Leach Voiles, whose fiance David died in a car accident 6 months prior to making the post. He had gone to a store 45 minutes away to get her ice cream. An hour passed and he hadn't come back. Around 10 PM she got a call from his mother saying he had gotten into an accident and died on impact. She carried the guilt with her after he died, always thinking, you know, if I hadn't asked for the ice cream, David would have still been alive. While he used to be at work, they used to talk over Facebook Messenger, and so she used to reread their conversations a lot just out of nostalgia and missing him. But his Facebook started saying he was active even though he couldn't have been. She saw it again and again and again. She messaged the account assuming it was a hacker telling them to stop messing with a dead person's account. She started getting sporadic messages back and forth saying, hello, can you see this? It's me, it's David. Please believe me, to which she was getting very angry and very hurt because why would someone want to mess with her like that? And just mind you, the messages were broken, they weren't full words, but it was still clear to see what he was saying, so I'm just relaying the full message to you guys. But then, worst of all, he said, please Peaches, which is what he used to call her. She was taken aback, but then realized the hacker could have easily gone through their conversations and known that he called her that. Then the account started calling her. She answered and actually heard David say, Ashley, it's me. She began crying and asked how he was calling, and the line cut. Later that night, after she got another call, he was saying he missed her, and this time there was no static whatsoever. She was telling him how she missed him, and then all of a sudden he said, Ashley, why did you kill me? Ashley, you killed me, you murdering bitch. But his voice was deeper, it was distorted. He continued saying, Ashley, you killed me, you should kill yourself. Then she started getting angry and she pulled herself together knowing David would never talk to her like that. She asked who the hell was speaking, and the voice began to laugh maniacally. The deep voice went on saying he wasn't David, but he had gotten to know him pretty well over the last few months. He went on saying, who I am doesn't matter, I will tell you what I want. I want your soul. And then the call ended. Before she could even process what just happened, she got a Facebook notification saying David is nearby. When I was reading the story for the first time, it literally gave me chills, and relaying it to you guys right now also gives me chills. Now at number 2 is Hawk. This one's from Shannara Johnson, who used to be a tarot reader in Sedona, Arizona. She worked at a new age center, and there were about 15 to 20 other psychic readers at the center. She was the new girl, and her room was across Cindy, a longtime reader. Cindy was middle-aged, not particularly friendly, and quite witchy. Downstairs was a binder with a picture and bio of all the readers that customers could go through and choose. There was one Native American reader, also fairly new, called Hawk, Hawk, who everyone loved because he was so nice, and he was also married to another reader at the center called Amy. Hawk started warning Shannara about Cindy, saying she had no good intentions towards her and that she was jealous of her getting so many customers despite being so new. He went on to say Cindy was an actual witch and was connected to a satanic set of Tibetan monks. One day he told Shannara he had seen Cindy stare at her headshot in the binder and perform a spell over it, weird hand gestures and all. He told Shannara she had to protect herself from Cindy and sage her room more often. At one point he even offered to deal with her and said he could do something about her. Once, when the center was quite slow, she went to Hawk for a Native American spirit animal reading. During the reading, his face suddenly shifted and his features were superimposed by another glowing face. The face had a different voice inside, talking about a commitment and a deal, and that if she does it, she could have whatever she wanted. And that line, she recognized it straight away. She knew that was the devil's line. She asked him what commitment he was talking about and his face disappeared. Shannara made an excuse and left Hawk straight away and got more and more scared of being harmed. She sought divine guidance about Cindy and realized perhaps it was Hawk that was the bad guy all along, enticing her to let him harm her on her behalf. She ended up speaking to Cindy and sorting things out with her, but was damn sure Hawk was Satan himself. His wife Amy even woke up one night and his side of the bed was empty, and all she found was a black hellhound with glowing red eyes at the foot of their bed. And finally, at number 1 is The Asylum. I honestly feel like this one could be the basis of a horror film, and if it gets made into one, I'm gonna be really pissed because I thought of it first. But anyway, this story is from Redditor Mystic Dragon 19, who is an urban explorer. Well, she was, until she decided to explore the Celestial Valley Mental Asylum. Why people, why? Abandoned buildings are bad enough, why would you put yourself through going to a mental asylum? Like, I don't get it. I don't get it. But anyway, March 29th, 2019, she packed her bag and necessities, you know, flashlight, phone, some food, etc. I mean, let's be real, this ain't no amateur hour. She got to the asylum at around 7:30 p.m. and what used to be a pristine 4-story white building was now a crumbling, rusty one covered in ivy. When she finally got into the building, she first noticed the smell. It didn't smell musky like most old buildings did, it smelled sickly sweet, kind of like death. She then saw a bunch of graffiti everywhere, some band logos, and a large cruel symbol that to her evoked anger and malice. She saw a gurney against the wall, papers on the ground, real horror movie vibes, but she carried on anyway. She was about to go into the next room when she heard a loud slam. She whipped around and saw the gurney was on its side. It had fallen down despite it not being windy at all, and to make herself feel better, she put some music on to distract herself. By 9:45 p.m. she made her way to the second floor, which looked weirdly clean for a decrepit building that showed no signs of life. She took another step forward and all of a sudden the hall was filled with people, many restrained to gurneys, while doctors took them from room to room. Many of the patients were screaming like animals, and as quickly as they came, they disappeared. The user called out when she saw them, but they couldn't hear her. She ran downstairs having had enough of the second floor, and now past midnight she started hearing Leslie in a sing-song distorted voice. Leslie was her name, just to clarify, and she looked everywhere but no one was there. She went towards a room she saw light coming out of, but stepped into a puddle of sorts. She put her hand in to feel it, hoping it was water, but of course it was blood. Inside the room she saw 6 hooded figures in a circle speaking a language she couldn't understand. She saw a pentagram and a naked tie-down girl laying in the middle of it, who also had a pentagram carved into her. She was screaming to let me go, but of course they wouldn't. On the right of Leslie she saw a huge goat head pointing upwards. The girl got cut again and blood started coming out of the goat's mouth. At this point Leslie had had enough. Took you long enough, and she ran. She saw a black shapeless figure chasing her. She heard footsteps or hooves from it, and then it let out an unnatural bellow. She managed to get to her apartment at 3:30 a.m. in total belief she had just encountered the devil and his minions. And that's it for today's video, guys. That was a whole lot to digest, so I'm not gonna say anything else. Let me know what you guys thought of these stories in the comments below, and as always, I'll catch you next time. Bye!